Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Berlinale Talents. Welcome to The Making of a Series. It's great that you're all here to the second session within the framework of the Drama Series Days and supported by Medienboard Berlin-Brandenburg. Welcome. And we're very happy to have you guys here on stage. Parts of the team of the Berlinale series contender M, City Hans the Murderer. Please welcome Christoph Brunner, Martin Schlacht, and Hannes Salat. As well as our wonderful moderator of the session, Andrew Amundsen. And without much more from my side, I hand over to you and wish you some inspiring 19 minutes.
So the first what I wanted to open this up with is, when you watch this film, and maybe not in preparation, but having seen this film, what was it about the original that you, in the early discussions with the director, David Schocko, what did you want to honor from this film in your own making of this, and how did you draw on this? And maybe, Martin, you want to kick it off? No? No?
Hello everybody, by the way. When I first was introduced to this project to work with David on it, I thought, oh, this is a big deal to start working on a film like this. And I watched it again and again and again, and it's a fantastic movie, a real fantastic movie. It's like years ahead when you see it. I mean, it was 31 what they did, and it was totally clear there is no remake. Never use the word remake for it, but use the word like inspired or based or whatever, because you cannot make a remake and you cannot go with television series a remake of M. So that was what David and me we had this both the same feeling about that, and it's like 270 minutes now, and is it 270? Yeah, something like this, 300 minutes or something, and we have much more characters, and so. Basically, we tried not to make a remake of it, but of course, we had the inspiration of this great movie, and visually, I always had it in somewhere in my mind to think a little bit about the aesthetics of this. It was out of a question to do it black and white. It's the guy at the television; they were laughing when we talked about it, and. That's it.
Yeah, I think you have something with you. That's something that you made for yourself and for the director. This will be a little bit like story time.
I did a tiny little for me and the director. This is a kind of just a photo book with like 200 stills. From the original, and I gave it to the director as a Christmas present because we started shooting in the beginning of January, and I had it always with me, and David too, and there's some beautiful shots Fritz Lang and his cinematographer did in the 30s, and some of them I just stole. But a few, actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it was a constant source of inspiration. But at some point you move away from it. I wanted to give both of you a chance to also say, what was it about the original that you decided to take with you when you were working on the design and also on the editing? But Hannes?
What I like, what's interesting was for me, and David was saying, it is like after we're shooting, it's a cover version we do. And that's something what I like to speak about this movie, and what helped me is that it's playing now, that it's completely different. It's playing in Vienna, and the other thing was very interesting we talked about before was David wanted to, this movie was, I think it was completely shooted in the studios here in Babelsberg. And David wanted to that it looks like a studio movie, but just in original location. So that was a funny idea, and I liked it very lot. We liked it very, very much because I made it with the production design with Hubert Klausner together. We were two production designers. We were working sometimes in team, and it was a great work together, and it was good that we were together because it was so much work. We had about 100 locations, and we had find locations where we can. This nose thing is new, and I like that we can go make our movie and just inspired by M. I like this movie a lot, and I think it was really years, like you said, it's really years in front of every movie in this time from many things, and so it helps to make it different in our way.
Great. And Christoph, considerations for editing going into it?
Well, I mean, when I started with the project, I read the scripts, which I usually try to forget when I start editing. And then I asked David, should I prepare anything? And he said, yeah, maybe you could watch M, the original. So after the second week of editing, I thought, okay, maybe now it's time I should watch it once. And it was the moment I built a new editing room for this series. And in the beginning, I had no projection, and I was always waiting to get this really good projection and sound system be set up before I watch M. And I was already editing on M. And it was like 2 or 3 weeks after I started editing the first scene. So I watched the movie, and I was of course impressed and everything. But like with the script, I tried to forget it then again, just to have it somewhere in my mind. But I was not, somehow I tried to forget it. Yes.
Great. Well, let's run the next clip, which is the opening for episode 1 from your 6-part series. Very nice. Very nice. So can we talk about this? There was something that I thought was quite beautiful, and just because we're talking about the old film earlier, is that some of the, Hans, you did some new design on an old inspiration, and wondered if you wanted to show some of these pictures and share the process.
It was interesting with these balloons. They're having a role in the original, and in our film it has a big role too, because they were, I think, at 10 sets or something, and really it was, and it's like it's a normal. In some cases, it's a normal prop, and our prop master had worked on it, and then. We get an artist to make some try something out with these balloons, with ordinary balloons, and nothing worked really. It's looking like every time cheap, and it looks maybe strange because nobody will buy an ordinary balloon in this time, And then we say, okay, we have to quit everything what done before and make it completely new. And it's really getting a big work and a big theme, to produce new balloons who looks like balloons you can buy here, but has this special, they are so special in many ways. And David had some small drawing from him, and he was thinking that it had to have something from this figure, from this little man kind of balloon, and so we were thinking, how can we do this? And then we said, okay, let's do it. Let's design it really like you would design these balloons, and we get. With the Austrian, he's a character designer and graphic designer. His name is called Tony Weiss, and he gets some sketches from us and from David and some inspiration and moods, and he made these figures who looks really some kind of strange and a little bit. And yeah, I think I like the work on it very lot. because then we had to produce it, and it was too less time to make it in China, where you do it normally. So it means we had to have 2 months or more. So we had every balloon you see here is handmade and in some case hand printed, because we bought balloons, cut them out, and then they were printed, every piece on it, and then we are lucky that there's an Austrian a balloon artist really working there. She not gluing. It's like she's putting them. She make them, you know, like real. And it was a real challenge to make them look like, you know, balloons you can buy at every corner in some case.
Yeah, they're very beautiful and full of character.
Can I add something?
Yeah,
to this?
please.
It was really fantastic, this balloon thing, because we talked a lot about, and suddenly they came with this body and these faces, and they had a smiling face and a unhappy face on the other side, and the balloons started being a character in the film, and looking that way or that way, it gives a different atmosphere, and we had much more scenes like this shot, for example. This scene, actually, the balloons, it was not a big deal in the script in this scene, but then we had a policeman, what is it? Policewoman, I don't know, standing there holding this, because the clown is has the interview inside this police car. And it looked fantastic, and we had to tilt up to these balloons in the air, and they were smiling at you and waving at you, and it is a real strong element, and it was worth all this hard work of the art department.
They get really ready, I think 5 hours before shooting this scene, as you told, but it was really and then we had to have them 2 months. And they don't fly anymore, you know, because they're getting wet inside. So we have to open them again, because one of these balloons is about 600 euros.
And we lost some. Wow. I remember at least 2 times when a balloon was flying away and Hannes was crying.
Were you rolling on that?
No, I don't think so.
But it was a challenge. We had an assistant just working for these balloons all the time to have them ready, to, you know, that the balloons all the time are ready to shoot, you know. It was really hard. It was not funny. But it was...
helium is so expensive, meanwhile.
No, not the helium, no.
Well, that's, you know, the amount of time that you put into something like this, that's quite important. I'm just thinking from a talent perspective, you know, when you're approaching a series and it's about the time you have, which is, I'd like you to be able to talk a bit about the pre-production, how it compares with film, and because this is a session about, you know, failing better, the lessons learned, and being like kind of brutally honest with what works and what doesn't work. Because most everyone will have not seen these yet. It's just premiering tomorrow at Zoopalast with Drama Series Days. But what are the special considerations that you know you have to hold on to artistically for all of you, especially in the pre-production and production with camera and the art department? What are you fighting for? When are you moving on? How can you talk about how quickly you have to move and how precious things?
Disaster.
It's a disaster.
Of course. We had like 20 days for 90 minutes, yeah. But they're expecting like cinema quality.
Yeah. And we have a budget of, 3 Tatort criminal stories for television. But it's, you know, this is with 100 actors and 100 locations, and it's
Can you imagine 100 locations in 60 days? That means almost 2 locations a day, and that's really hard, because that was, for those guys, they were struggling like crazy. And
it was in winter time, you know, much night shoots in winter time. It was hard for the team too.
I mean,
let's not talk about snow, okay?
But no, I think we have to.
I think you do have to talk about snow.
Thing.
But I mean, in a way, it's really, you're set up for failure. I mean, that's a big ask, to be producing at the quality that they're wanting this much content in that short amount of time. I think for anyone who might be interested in the work in series, how do you organize your time? How do you fight for what we want artistically, but also keep moving?
I think it helps if you have a kind of experience. So like David and me, we worked the first time together, and we had, also the prep was not that long actually. I think we spent maybe 2 months, not sure, and maybe even less, I don't know. And maybe 2 weeks of talking about shot list. We didn't have a shot list, of course, it's too much, the 300 minutes. It takes a year to make shot list for that. But so it helps if you can react quickly on any occasion, whatever happens on a set, and I think you need kind of experience. So I was happy to have 20 years of experience doing this.
Our first AD quit I think one.
Your first AD
one and
quit?
a half. Yeah, quit 1.5 months.
Burnout.
No, he really said he was thinking we can't do.
We
this
lost
project.
the first AD and we lost the location manager right before shooting.
They were thinking we
that's
don't
funny.
get this thing happened with this money, with this time and money. They are all said no, it's not possible. But we did it.
It was David pushing all the time. I mean, he was the one who said we want this quality, and
we started shooting on
we all want this quality.
January 8th, and the first AD of the series came in on December 31st.
Yeah.
What is like a week before shooting? Can you imagine that? For like 4 months shooting, first AD coming in a week before shooting? I mean, this is
It was hard.
suicide.
Are there any questions at this point from the audience in this pre-production? We're getting into production time. All right, be thinking. So you're preparing, and so you're into production now. And just something I wanted to understand. I think Christoph, you'd mentioned that you started on the same day that they started shooting. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So it takes a day or two until it's pre-graded and it comes into the editing room. But I started like on the first day, and in the beginning I aimed to at least have some rough cut of what they shoot every day, so I don't get too much behind, which was not possible.
Now, how many editors were on this series?
It was just me alone. I mean, David really asked me if I do want to do the whole series. And I said, okay, I've never done this before. I mean, this is crazy, I think. But usually you have, multiple editors working on different episodes, but it was not. I mean, the key for me to start editing was actually the music. I mean, there was a composer, and David asked her, I think, when he started writing. So I remember him he told me that he had some piece of music composed already when he was writing the scenes. And when I started editing, I had this bunch of music files that were there, and I was so in love with them because it was Dorrit Kreisler, and she's such a fantastic composer, and you can hear it like in the opening scene. I mean, what music does here, and she works with a theremin, which is a very like electronic. It's an instrument from the 1920s, a Russian guy invented it, and it's really special. Do you know it? I don't know. It works with 2 antennas, and it has some very special sound, and through that I could somehow start editing, and have the some kind of speed that was necessary to get through the material with an idea and with not too much necessity of re-editing later on, because there's just not the time to do that in this schedule. I mean, you can't compare it with a movie.
Right. One special consideration, I mean, I just wanted to tie together both of your work, both as an editor and Martin, your work as a cinematographer. This idea that if you want to know how to shoot something, you should know how to edit something, so that you know how to shoot, what you need to shoot. And I wanted to see if you could talk a little bit, Martin, about your feelings of responsibility for the edit, for the editing process when you're shooting.
It's the first time I hear this question. It's very interesting. Of course, I feel totally responsible. And if something goes wrong in the editing room or it doesn't work, I feel at least 50% responsible for this problem. Of course, every single shot I do, I have the editing in mind. Nevertheless, at the end, they do it differently. But at least you should give them the chance to have something that works, and that's.
The nice things we don't have to read scripts or anything.
Usually, they cut out all the beautiful stuff.
Yeah, naturally.
That's what they do. You know, in the beginning of the original, you saw this. What is it? This column with the Litfaßsäule. What is it? I don't know the English word. Where you have the shadow of M coming.
Right, the poster.
We shot the same shot.
Ah.
And you know what he did? He took the shadow out.
Wow.
See, that's my life.
But I put some snow in for you.
The CG guy did.
Yeah, you're right.
Was there ever a point, I mean, no, with this, can you talk about cameras, workflow, how much actual footage you're producing, what's coming into the edit, and is there something that, is everything working, or are you sometimes using the editing that's happening parallel to find out if something's working, or do you always know it's working?
My position on set is, as I don't have any time to watch any editing, I don't even watch dailies because I'm too tired. I see it when I do it, and that's it. And no news are good news. As long as this guy is not calling us, I'm fine, and I don't think about it, because usually you don't have the time to redo anything.
Actually, today is the first time we are talking to each other.
That's true. Oh, we had a beer together yesterday.
We had a beer together, yes.
Okay, there's somebody out there with a question. Do we have a microphone? Oh, there's a fun little thing. It's down here, left-hand corner.
What is that?
You can throw it. It's lots of fun.
That's cool.
I just got a question. If you started to edit parallel, did you shoot chronologically in a way, or how was it structured with the shooting when you started already editing?
Well, they tried to, I mean, of course, they tried to shoot chronologically somehow, but on the other side, of course, it was not chronological.
It was the opposite. Everything was built around Moritz Bleibtreu's schedule.
But what were the actual, I mean, you had snow, right? There's certain things that happen with the snow. I mean, what were the considerations?
So, well, I mean, most of the things that had snow inside were from the first two episodes, and they got the material with snow inside from the first two episodes right in the beginning, so I had a lot of things that were in the right order somehow.
You know, talking snow, what you usually do is you try to get real snow. And in an ideal world, you have a shooting schedule that is a kind of flexible to wait for snow. If you have 100 characters and 100 locations, forget about that. If you have a first AD coming in 1 week before shooting, forget about that. So we had a schedule, and usually my feeling was have the snow at the end of the shooting, because if you have the snow earlier, you start shooting snow. If you have all the snow shootings in the first weeks and you don't have a snow, you have to have everything done artificial. And that's what happened, actually. We had all the snow scenes at the beginning because they thought in January maybe it's more snow than in March, what is a big mistake in Vienna. And we had to bring 250, 300 trucks of snow from the Alps to the city. And when we finished the snow scene, the winter came and we had to remove the snow. So, talking about schedule and chronological and all that, forget it.
They just wanted to bring up...
You have some funny snow things? I mean, it was really crazy when we had to skip locations because suddenly in March we had the snow and we had to find new locations within 2 days. Like this forest of the girl scene. Night exterior, forest, big lighting shit, and find a new location and next day shoot it. Location like 200 meters lower because there's no snow maybe.
Is it nice?
So we were looking, I think, about 100 parks. We were trying. We have to find a park, you know, where this snow can be without too much VFX, and because we have seen, I think,
And
how
the
many
budget
days
we had, it was a small budget for big snow scenes.
And it was hard to find a place, but it took a lot of money to get this park like this, because when we shoot this, it was the warmest days in January. It had about 15 degrees. There were rivers going down.
People were sweating in the snow.
with water from this. All the snow is coming from anywhere we can get it.
It was melting faster than we could shoot it sometimes, really.
It was really...
Within one day, it was gone.
Yeah, it was, they did, I think, 50 centimeters of snow that it's holding in some way. I was really surprised.
David, the director, this year, sometimes in the morning, he sent a picture to me and he said, we should have shot the film this year because we have so much snow in Vienna this year. Last year...
And really, the hardest thing was when the snow really comes, because then the shooting schedule changed completely, and we had to, we have 2 parts of shooting, this first part, and then we had a break about 1 week, and then the second part, and then we had to prepare locations from the second part in 1 week. So we had getting people to do it. There were big teams at different locations because we were shooting the other locations at the same time. So that was really a hard time. The snow is come.
The problem is you can bring in snow, but you cannot get rid of the snow.
And then we had this funny.
Yeah. Bringing in snow is a matter of money, but you never can get this park if there is snow. There is no way to get off the snow. No way. And actually, that's what we had to fight. These problems.
This small hut, where we had this wonderful outside. We were looking for it, because the outside there was so many things. What this hut where some figure lives in, it has outside searching scene with wind machines and all this stuff. And
that was the one that we had to find a new location 2 days before shooting it, with wind machines and thunderstorm and
it was like a studio location then, because you can't see outside, and you wanted this landscape and all this stuff, and it was all full of snow.
To cut the story short, we had it always wrong. We had it always the opposite we needed.
Weather-wise, it was really every time the wrong weather.
And you get stronger with this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question with this, the idea that if you fail enough, you start to find these happy mistakes, things that start to work. At what point were you like, okay, this isn't working, but this is working, and you start to get into a groove? At what point did you feel that it was moving in the right direction and things were happening? Or was it just a constant struggle, always?
Always, everything is perfect, always.
Okay. Well, maybe this it's time to show a clip. I wanted to set this clip up as, it's a great segment, a little montage using the music that...
No, actually not. It's a different music, this clip.
Oh, okay. It's a different music than you talked about earlier. But this is it music that the writer-director David had pulled out beforehand?
Well, no, this is a music that the song is called Cold Wind Blowing. Mm-hmm. and David had mentioned when in the script already, but it was not from the composer. It was really like for this montage, which is very... outstanding, I think, within the whole series, but it gives quite an atmosphere to the moment of the series.
Great. I mean, I thought just thinking about when you're working on a series like this, establishing a tone, I think all of your work is represented in this one montage, so that's why I wanted to play it, and maybe we can talk more about that. The tone and how you found that in each of your departments.
We are represented in every frame of that series.
Exactly.
All of us.
Of course. But can we play that one then? Any questions at this point from the audience? Anybody else have something right here?
I love this.
I'm assuming that the episodes are all written and finished when you guys started or before you guys started. And the question is, how much time was in between each episodes? And were there big changes made in between based on something not working out with the story as it's been written, where suddenly you had to redo the design, or it affected the editing somehow?
One interesting thing about this work with David, and I had it in another series we worked before. He didn't wrote the last episode of this series when we started. So it was very interesting because all the time we are looking at locations where they are in the script. So he said it can be like this or it can be like this. He was very open of successions we make. So we were thinking. So we you know, it's in some cases it's then you really. You can do what you want, but you don't know where it's going. So in this case, it was interesting, and we put all our locations we had in our mind and were some kind thinking about, and then we found some good locations who really worked for the end of the series in this court scene, and I'm very happy with this because it's a big location. I was. Somebody for another project, I looked at it, and for this it was really like the perfect location. And the other one too, so it was great to work like this, you know, that's, you don't have most of the time not the chance to do it like that. So because it would be very nice if you are involved in a project 2 years ago, before, then it would be much nicer to work on this look of the movie or the serial, whatever.
Great. Back to this clip that we just watched. This is a moment when watching the series, I started to. I leaned forward. I was like, okay, now I was already into the series, but this set a new tone for me. I was like, the movement, the sound. Can you talk about the camera movement and your discussions with David about how the camera would flow for this series?
You mean in general?
In general, yeah.
I can't answer this. This is there was no time to talk about it. We just did it.
Okay, so good. That's an honest answer.
No, it is honestly. There's a lot of coming out of a stomach in the moment, and if there's any technical needs, you need to decide in advance, like if you need Steadicam or crane or stuff like this. We have that pinned down, of course. Mm-hmm. But that was, I think, a few days. And a dolly you have always with you in the truck, and if you want to move the camera, you decide to move it.
Yeah. Was there ever something that you mentioned? We were talking before, about something that I'd seen quite a bit that's in the series is the use of shadows. And there was one scene in particular that I brought up with you. Can you talk about this scene? We don't see it here, but...
You cannot see it because he took it out, all the shadows he took out.
Not all of them are out, that's not true.
No, but many.
Yeah, they're shortened.
Yeah, or gone.
Fight. So you had mentioned a light was stuck at some point, and it informed what we saw, these long shadows walking. This is the Molotov cocktail scene that we don't see here, but this is an example
I can bring my laptop. I mean, I have the film here, and you can see. I can show you the shadows.
No, but these mistakes that... Yeah.
You mean the mistake? This is about mistakes, isn't it?
It is. It's
what is it's called? How to fail better. No, this was indeed it was a funny situation. Of course, lighting in shadows was a kind of something for this thing and this impressionist.
One of the mistakes, or what?
No, we had a scene with the two guys coming and throwing a Molotov cocktail into a shop or whatever, and we started lighting the scene, and suddenly the set manager, location manager, came to me and said, "You know what? We have to be done here by 10 because this is a place for old people and they have to sleep at 10, and we cannot shoot longer than 10." And said, "But it's scheduled until 1 in the morning, and there's a big scene, and this is 3 hours. So I mean, that's a big deal to cut 3 hours." And said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, that's a mistake, and we have to be done at 10." And then they wrapped the shooting here. I said, "Oh wow." The second thing happened is that my cherry picker for the lighting of the scene was broken, and suddenly it stuck with the light halfway up, and I couldn't use it. And I said, oh, well, now we have another 2 hours for like 5-minute scenes, and the cherry picker is gone. And I said, okay, what to do? Bring the light down. It's the only way to do. And suddenly, a nice thing happens, because instead of a regular shadow, the shadow became like 30 meters, because the moon was coming from the ground. And it looked fantastic for the scene. I loved it. Yeah. But this was sometimes you have to react and work with things like this, and make sure you find something interesting, make something interesting out of it.
Mm-hmm. And Christoph, for you, with as you were going through an editing, what were the things that you started to pull out that were really working for you, that maybe weren't planned, that weren't scripted?
I can speak about what we saw right now, this montage, because in the script, this montage was just for the night. And there was one scene that was kicked out by the editing, not because of shadows, and all the thing with the letter, you know, the transportation of the letter, and even the scene with the cuckoo's clock and the boy giving this plastic bag with clothes to the man in the car. All this was not supposed to be in this montage. This montage was in the script already, but it was just during the night shots. So it also somehow refers to your question, because when you speak about how did the scripts change, they did change, of course, in editing as well, especially on the first episode. The first episode was, I don't know, more than an hour, and we were supposed to have 45 minutes, and we had really find the completely different structure on the first episode to keep the tension and everything of the movie, and it's so many characters had to be exposed that it was really difficult to find a natural way of when to show, well, just editing, when you see what, and it was not immediately there, and we had to, especially in the first episode, we had to find a lot of new things.
You brought up the tension. You know, this is a 6-part series. We got a child murderer on the loose. The city's trying to hunt him down. Can you talk about, with editing, with camera, with design, this creation of tension and the maintaining of it? I don't know if you can talk about that. I know it's not easy.
Me?
I can better do it than talk about it. I don't know to talk about this.
Why are you here? Like, seriously, why are you here? Like, you're like, I didn't, it's done.
Do you want the microphone? No. Okay.
I try to answer all the questions I can answer. This one I cannot answer. I'm sorry.
It's not an easy thing, this the tension that you have to maintain. Can you talk about it from an editing standpoint?
Honestly, it's really different also from editing. I mean, what you feel tension somehow, but you don't know it. There's no recipe. I mean, I think when David wrote, for example, this first episode, if you read the script, the tension was there. You read the script and you know, okay, you could feel what was going on. Then you edit it, and this feeling doesn't come up, and we don't know the reason in the beginning, and then you have to find solutions until you think, okay, now it's the right moment to leave the scene, or maybe it's you have to start finding, but I don't think that there are recipes or some kind of dogma or rules that I'm working with. It has a lot to do with how you feel in the editing. I mean, you have the nice thing in editing is that you can press play and watch it and see how is the impact. And I think it's for you it's much more difficult because you are in a conceptual art moment. You don't have music. You don't have all this. There's not the film there. So I don't know what
and you can, whenever you do it, you can never change it. When you do it, it's done on location.
Yeah. What we want to try out at this project was.
Sorry. No, but now we have to really speak about shadows, because now if we talk about tension, a lot of tension in this movie is done by shadows appearing, and we really used it. I really would like now to I don't do it now, but to show you some other scenes where it's very, very strongly, I think, used this sudden shadows appearing. And I have, I don't know, 30, 50 shots in my mind where Martin and David came up with ideas how you can start with a shadow. The thing is that it doesn't fit in from the rhythm. It really slows down the pace. So you have just very rare situations where you can use these things. But they were there. I had many. That's why Martin says I'm cutting away the shadows. And shadows, these are the moments that are supposed to be filled with tension. You know, if it's boring, it's boring. It's just a shadow. But I think one of my aims was to find moments for that and to fill these things with tension somehow. I mean, that's what the edit. Yeah, I stop talking now.
Okay, good. Hannes, you said I could see that you're bringing up something that you have in this idea in the design to create this tension.
We were trying to find some reduced. Speaking of the pictures we want to see in this serial, so and in some case, speaking about the characters to make it some kind of ironic is the wrong word, but to try out something what is a little bit farther than the reality or something like that to make them in some case interesting, or I don't know, more fitting to the story, because it's a fictional movie, and so we can, and it's very nice to work to try something out, and to what in the preparation of our work we tried out to that we don't see just pictures on the wall if we need it, and so because this doubling of pictures every time in some flats or everywhere is something I don't like very much, but in this case we need it for storytelling sometimes, and so.
Can you bring up these pictures? Can you bring up these pictures as an illustration?
This was some kind, this main flat where it's main location, and we do there.
These are the parents of the first missing girl, yes?
Yeah. And there we had an original location where we throw everything out and made everything by our way. So we designed wallpapers and in here and wanted to have it in some clear. This was the location before, and there it is afterwards. So. We tried to have it in some kind of this. I don't know if you know this word in this kind of people, like in Austria we say Bobo family. It's like this artistic young
Bohemians.
Yeah. So, and you know, every time you get if you find an original location, it's mostly not working for a movie. So we have to do a lot to that it's in our way it functions. This was interesting because this was a kitchen in a location where we're filming the refugees camp. Can you say? I don't know. And
the Flüchtlinge, the refugee home.
Refugee home, yeah. And this was then the pathology we made out of it, and it's a very nice location, I think. So. And this one was an empty, like in some kind of small castle. And this was funny. We found at this place some of this from the 70s, these sofas, and we liked them so much. Then we put it was on the last place we're shooting, and so we say, okay, let's put them and let's look like a Russian airport or something. I don't know. And there's this one location where M is hiding. It's some kind of our work. it's a loft from an artist, and there is Udo Kiers, he's the photographer, and we found a street photographer. He gave us so much pictures, and this one, and there this was interesting too. We just said, let's do it, just everything. It started finding this, bar in the internet, and then we say, okay, let's do this whole flat just black, make it black, everything, just black and gray. It was funny. There was this, we can't remove, we made that's again from the, and this was this found location for the
This is for the finale, yeah?
For the finale, yeah. And this is from, and for this location we had really fight a lot. We were, I think, 3 times they say we can't shoot there, and we all the time have said we have to shoot there. It's the only location in Vienna where this is working, like this media concern, and it's a library which Sarah Hadid built, and it's all the time it's open and it's made for students. So we had this schedule of Moritz bleibt treu, just these 3 days when he had time for us. So in some way we get, I think we were so, we really fight for some locations to shoot there, and it is a very good location for this movie.
This location, for example, had a huge glass rooftop, and most of the scenes are daylight scenes in the script, but we were not allowed shooting daytime, and it looks totally different. So we had to find solutions for, I think we had like half a day of daytime shooting there on a Saturday or something. Yeah, so it was technically, this was one of the most difficult and hardest, and we had so much things to do there, and I think we got the permission to shoot there like during shooting sometimes. So we had to have always a plan B where to shoot this scene, because if we don't get the permission and we shoot it in 1 month, so what to do? And this was a real challenge. But it was worth because it looks fantastic. The architecture of the building is fantastic, and this tiny guy up there is Moritz bleibt treu, and this is really I think a strong location for the scenes for his company actually that he's running.
Is there another question? There's a question back up here in the corner, behind you there.
So, as far as I understand, you didn't have a lot of money, you didn't have a lot of time, and you were not really willing to step back when it comes to look good, to make something big out of it. So, what was the solution? Like, what did you do? If you don't have time and you don't have money and you wouldn't... I
think you have the normal time, like what it is for a television series like this, like 10 days for 45 minutes.
Yeah, that's true, but as far as I understand...
And you try to make best out of it. Hannes did work with like double crew and night shifts to prepare the locations, and we were working over hours, what is expensive stuff and hard stuff for 60 days, working over hours, but I think we had 2 days where we had no over hours, so it's exhausting. And I think everybody in the crew was sick sometimes because it was too much for people, and I think that's the way it goes. And the last years, most of the projects I did were that way, that it's the time you get and the money you get is getting shorter and smaller, and they're expecting more, especially in the television world.
So for me, it's very nice to be that our series is now here at Berlinale, because it's for all these people who are working with us. They're giving everything. They had sometimes families. Some of them have family. They were not at home. They're just working for this long time for this project, and it was a hard work, But in some case now, it's good if we know for what we did it, but it would be better if we had much more money for it,
I mean, what
can you do?
The thing working over hours is a big discussion theme in general, I think, because more and more productions just think that way, because you don't have to pay extra for actors, what is most expensive, for locations, for equipment, for head of departments that are usually flat deal. So what is overtime? Overtime is usually cheap people, the assistants in the crew. that are paid overtime. So working 14 hours, 5 days a week is much cheaper than working 6 days. And that's the way they calculate. And anyway, at the end they tell you, oh, you bad guys made over hours. So, but I say, yeah, I prefer not making over hours because nobody's paying me. Yeah, it's a gift to the producer, my time and the director's time, and Hannes' time, and everybody's time. So, but that's the way film producing develops more and more, is my feeling.
We got a question down here on the bottom left, and then up there.
Right.
Down here first. Thank you. You can't hurt it. It's okay.
Yeah, but there's a camera. Okay. Well, basically, I have a follow-up to what you just said, because when production is so difficult, and you want to, how do you keep up the motivation in your team, and how do you take care for yourself? I mean, how do you cope basically with no sleep? Getting sick is one way, but I mean, you probably can't afford to get sick at some point,
I think the motivation is depending on the project, and if you have a project where people are happy working on it, the motivation is. It was never a problem of motivation, I think.
All the people.
It depends on the director a lot.
I mean, sometimes people want to do crazy things because they are crazy.
I know, and I know how it feels to be like in a rush, and you just, then you just do it. But still, then who is the one keeping up the motivation? Because that is still kind of like the chef position. Maybe it's David. I don't know. David. I don't know. But
of course, the director is the most important person in this situation, and I think every head of department has to. I always have a look. How is my crew? How is my lighting crew, especially because they are working physically very hard, and or assistants camera, and I'm talking to them, and if I see problems raising, I try to help to avoid it in advance as good as possible for my crew. I cannot think about Hannes' crew. He's doing the same with his people, and if you're seeing there's problems coming, serious problems, you have to find solutions like get another guy in the crew, or for example, I always make sure nobody's driving a car after overtime in my crew. No lighting truck, no camera car, so they have to bring a driver stand. For example, it's a tiny thing, but I think my crew admires that I take care about it because I feel responsible for it.
In some cases, you make the crew bigger, then it's maybe getting more expensive, but you can't do anything because this train, if this train is running, it's like you can't stop it anymore. 1 month before shooting, it's driving, and then you just can react in some way. And if we all can't get it at the time, we have to add people to it. But it's really, you can't every time add for 1 or 2 hours more the people, so it's hard for all of the people, and you're feeling it too, after 3 months, 2 months or 3 months shooting, the motivation goes down, and we need all the rest afterward. After this shooting, it was not easy.
I think this is not particular about this project. This is I did right after this one. I did another movie for television, and the plan was 23 days for 90 minutes, and I think a week before shooting they cut out 1 day for 22 days because of a budget, and you have to do the same thing. They didn't change a single line in the script. They just took out a shooting day. And it works.
There was a question up here, the gentleman.
It's a different question. You said before that the last episode wasn't written when you start shooting. Did I understand?
No, not shooting. Preparing.
Okay.
It was 3 months before we start shooting. So we start preparing, and it was not written in this time. And then I think, I don't know, it was 4 months before. We just started to work, and then David said it would be nice to have a location he can write on, this location.
Okay.
Yeah. And this was, I think it was...
There was a script, for example, when I remember I read a version of the last script of the last series. That was the showdown was located in a forest. as an idea. And I said, David, I don't think it's a good idea to have this in the forest because it's such a big scene and it's 20 minutes night scene. And you have a real big, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's an enemy, the nature, you know, you never know. And having that tight schedule and no way to react. And we decided to not do it in the forest, and I think it was a perfect decision. But at that moment, we didn't have the scenes in the script. It was like only we were just talking about it. It was like a treatment, maybe.
And we don't like the forest of visual as a. Yeah. I think it's. Yeah.
Forest is one of the most difficult things visually to work with, and this is such an important scene for the content of the. I really said, let's not make us depending on shooting in a night forest for 20 minutes and the showdown of this whole thing here.
The fact that the script were already was a matter of time, not an artistical reason.
I think it was also discussions with television channels.
All right, you have the microphone there.
Yeah, I noticed in your clips you had quite a lot of child extras. And then in addition to the central character of the young girl. So I'm just wondering, with Austrian TV, what are the parameters like for shooting with kids, with child actors? How many hours can you have them in front of the camera? How many hours can you have them on set? And also just in addition to that, were there any issues with like the chaperones or with the parents regarding the disturbing nature of the drama?
It's much easier than in Germany. That's for sure, what I know. I think in Germany you have 4 hours with a child. And I shot the film in England. They have this chaperone system with a guy sitting with a list and making this quarter hour, Xing out quarter hours.
That's right, yeah.
And that actually is a perfect system, I think. We had a child main character in England. And you have like, I think the child is allowed to be 5 hours in front of the camera and 8 hours or something like this on a set. So you have 3 resting hours you need, and in the 3 hours you need to have a room or whatever and a teacher and all that. So the English system, I think, makes a lot of sense. In Austria is a little bit the Austrian way. There is kind of no rules, or you're talking to the parents and make sure the girl is. I mean, it was a lot of night shooting, and make sure you find a deal with the parents that are responsible. And honestly, the real rules I don't even know because it's not so difficult.
Right down in front of you there.
You mentioned briefly about the library location. I think it was the big white one. What did you do or what did you put in place to make it look like day? Like what kind of lighting systems did you have in place?
It was mainly available light. It was the Sarah available light. Sarah Hadid did the lighting concept for the building. What was a strange lighting concept because she had different light in every floor. It was getting from very warm neons to very cold. Yeah. What is interesting in the daytime, but not so beautiful in the nighttime, I think. But there was nothing to change. Only in the color grading, I tried to adapt the way I love it, but it was more or less the original available light.
If you pass the microphone to behind.
Speaking of mistakes, you mentioned there were mistakes that actually worked in your favor, such as the lighting that was really big against the building. I wonder if you look back on the project, whether anything went wrong that sort of still niggles at you, and if you could go back and change it, what did you learn, or what could you pass on to us?
Have a shooting schedule that allows you to be not depending that much on the weather, but have a little bit of time to breathe and to change. But this was our biggest enemy was the weather. And I think you can do better, but well, difficult with it. The problem was the amount of actors that make things so, and to have fly them in and out is a huge amount of money also.
We'll continue with the questions. There's just one more clip. I think we'll want to jump ahead to the tunnel clip, if that's all right. Can we do that? And then the microphone's going to go over, where were you? Over here, to the hand up. Thanks. Okay, can we play the clip?
The Flucht clip, I think.
The Flucht? Okay.
Flucht and blah, blah, blah.
Before we go to your question, this, I know from talking to you just briefly, it was a very difficult, and maybe you would say one of the most difficult scenes for you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
This was actually the hardest day I had in my life, this shooting. It is the scene when the guy runs into this hall. It was like a canal. It is like the size of a football field. First of all, I lost my gaffer because he was sick, and I had to light it without the gaffer, and who was preparing it actually with me, so he was not with me. Second, we had, it was a mistake in the shooting schedule, I think. The scene that is followed by what we just saw is a 20-minute trial, and with 250 extras from Bratislava and Roma and people not talking our language, and they were really like extras, cheap extras, and including small children, and it took like 10 minutes to get into this location, like narrow, not the one that you saw in the film, but it's even more narrow. Like only two people can walk next to each other, like 100 meters into this canal, and it takes like 300 people in and out takes like an hour. And we had one day for 20 minutes, and it was crazy. It was insane. And I think at 11 o'clock, first guy said, I need to pee. And so suddenly everybody needed to pee, and they just left. And we knew, okay, that's now a break. And we have 12 hours to shoot 20 minutes. And they all left, and then I came out, and they were all standing at the catering and having coffee and stuff like this. And I still I was sitting behind the column with David, and I was crying. I said, this is impossible, we cannot do it. This day we don't make it. We don't make a day. And then we decided to set up a third camera. We had 3 cameras, and I had my DIT operating a camera, and I had one camera non-operated and non-focused and nothing. And we had the 20 minutes like roll in a row, and just set up the cameras, roll, 20 minutes. Reset cameras, relight, roll, 20 minutes. And fortunately, the actors were fantastic, all of them. They knew the scene, and that's the way actually we did it. We did one take, and go for next one and reset up. And I think you had a good time to work on this scene. Huh?
It was not for you the craziest thing.
How many hours?
How
much footage did you have for this?
Well, I'm expecting usually I'm expecting like 2 hours of footage a day that I have to come through in one day to just what I aim for. So this was shot in the end of the thing, and I remember the maximum day they had was they came back with 6 hours. But on that particular day, I think it was more than 9 hours that arrived in the editing room. And there was no, you have to imagine if you make this roll through of a 20-minute scene without clapping or everything. There's no order. There's no, so they combined different scenes from the book into one huge one-taker, and then they did. I mean, it was. I understand now why they did it, but it was a complete mess. I mean, it was really. I think I just didn't edit on that day. I said, okay. I called the production company and said, okay, it's not possible. I can't edit 9 hours for one day. It's not. I mean, imagine
you cannot even watch it.
You can't even watch it. No, and I'm usually I've done movies, and I'm used to watch all the material. that's and I know you don't do it nowadays because people start like shooting 9 hours because they don't have operators to just say now it should be on and now it should be off. So I tried to ask my assistant to help me with sorting out the material, but she had so many other things to do that in the end, it just took longer. And in the end, I said, okay, we will need more time in editing. it was crazy.
I think they did a mistake. It was a 2 day shooting, not 1 day. That was simply a mistake.
Simply a mistake. Never again, right?
I don't know. I'm afraid yes.
Okay, your question?
Hi. How did the lack of time, basically, and the lack of shot lists affect your process in setting up and shooting and lighting? Did you try and use more available light, or did you just try and take the same approach but do it quicker?
Excuse me, can you repeat it? Sorry, I didn't get it.
The question...
I heard about the lack of shot list, yeah.
Yeah, so lack of shot list and tight schedule, how did that affect your approach to shooting? Did you look for more available light to use?
Well, that's depending on the location, and usually the lighting is not a big time consumption, because there's enough, if you're smart, there's enough things that can be done parallel. So the director can start rehearsing, and we can set up a shot list in the morning while they start lighting and all that. And usually most of the times we had a kind of a small rehearsal, and the director and me developed the shot list during the rehearsal for the scene. And we know what is important, what is the most important thing for the scene, and make sure you get this tension out of it, and yeah.
Another question? Right behind you.
Hello. I was just wondering, how was the look decision, and in collaboration with the production design, the camera selection, the color decisions, the palette, and all kind of that decisions? How do you work collaborating?
Yeah, for the look it was interesting because we worked for David for many projects, and we just said, let it make some kind of minimal looking locations. We brought together some mood pictures. I want to show just a moment, and then we, it was, this 90 locations. You have to start very early to find locations, and then you are standing on these locations and speak about the look in some case. We had some moods, like this or something like that. Some reduced pictures we were working on in some case. So and then so on this and then we had really to start working, and then we know each other very very well. Hubert, the other production designer, and me, we made several projects together, and I think in this case it was very interesting because we both give our best, what we know about with our experience, put it together, and in some case it doubled it. In some case you work, when you work together, it's just like it's not doubling, it's just getting better. But in this case we put all that we know can do together, and then it's doubled in some case, and we worked out in one direction. I think I worked with David and with Martin some project, and we have some. I think we have some taste who fits together.
I think one approach is what you mentioned in the very beginning, that idea of having it look like a studio. Usually you have the opposite. You shoot in a studio and try to avoid look like a studio. We shot on location and had a fun make it look like a studio, because the original was everything was shot in a studio, even the exteriors. You see 20 shadows of somebody walking there, and you don't try to do that nowadays, to have 20 shadows. But this idea of having look like a studio gives you a little bit of chance for hyper stylized, like this wall in the wallpaper in the living room of the family. There are some shots you look like they are sitting in the sky, and it looks really like a studio, and it was on a real location, and that was, I think, this approach that we followed the whole process, also with the lighting a little bit and the colors, and I did some testing with David and for the way we work for colors, and this is mostly done anyway in the color grading. And concerning camera, there's not such a big choice at the moment.
And we have time for one last question. If there's one more, right behind you. Lady in red.
Hi, I have a question about when you're shooting something that's inspired by something that was already written or shot. How did you deal with the copyright in this case, or was there any problem with it?
This is a question for producer. I think they bought the rights, simply. I mean, expensive, but you buy the rights.
Such an old film?
Yeah, I doubt this guy's. Whoever has the right has to be dead for 70 years, and it was shot in 31 or released in 31, and you have to buy the rights. That's what the production producers did.
They had troubles getting the rights. David told me, but they had to pay them and to get them. But it wasn't easy.
It takes like 2 years or something to. There was a guy. He's in his 90s who's holding the rights on M, and he's a dealer, a right dealer, I think in the US, and David, I think it was the director's personal effort to meet this 90-year-old guy and ask like a year to get the rights, and at the end you need a lot of money and then you get the rights.
Thank you.
Yes, well, thank you very much for your time today and sharing your experience. Thank you.
Thank you.